What up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of That Time in Hip Hop, the greatest hip hop archive show on YouTube. Come see us. Yes, I'm talking shit, whatever. But nevertheless, I am your host, Vegas of Hip Hop Now podcast. With me, That Time in Hip Hop, we got 770 shows. You know, we're going to keep adding them here and there. You just got to stay locked in. Tony from IntoTheDome.com and also Into the Dome podcast, which you should check out. You should subscribe. Tony, what's good, man?
Hey man, everything good, fellas, man. Sipping a nice craft beer tonight after riding this bike for the last 3 years. So I deserve it.
Right. For all you people on the the 2023, I'ma lose weight. I'ma get back to this man doing it. And he don't need a New Year's resolution, right?
Mhm.
He don't need a reason. Uh thank God he don't have a doctor to tell him, you lose it or you ain't here no more. Because we know
Mhm.
some people do that. Health is wealth.
No
Do it.
doubt.
You'll feel so much better about yourself. Also with me, you know him from the What's Going Down episode of That's My Mom. No, I'm just playing. Uh, from Hip Hop Twitter. If you don't know what Hip Hop Twitter is, it's a podcast about all the takes and basically nonsense. And Tone know a lot about this.
Mm.
You hear and see on Twitter. And what makes that an interesting podcast is the fact that I'm on Twitter, but I don't get to see everything. And sometimes gents would be like, yo, did you see this tweet? Did you see that? And I react in real time. It's comedy. It's about hip hop. Obviously, we give our perspectives. Gents, what's good, brother?
What's happening, y'all? Happy New Year.
Yes.
Let's we ready for this big event we're about to kick off on this topic right now.
Absolutely, man. And y'all watching right now, subscribe, follow on all your podcasting platforms. If you're listening on the audio side, it's going to be everywhere, and share it with people enjoy this kind of content. You saw the name, you saw the title, you know what we're here to talk about. It's 2023. If you're from the future,
Man.
get your punk ass out of here because you already know what happened. But it's 50 years of hip hop. So
Wow.
the entire 2023 from organizations, media organizations, publications that talk about hip hop all the time, and those that don't are celebrating 50 years of hip hop, including places like PBS that has a special that's coming up pretty soon with Chuck D. 50 years of hip hop, right? Just like other genres like rock, where people felt like it's a fad as in kids' music is loud noise. Now you see rock has been around, rock and roll has been around forever. Same thing with hip hop. A lot of people thought it wouldn't last for a number of reasons, and we're going to get into some of those controversies over the years and why hip hop is still here and why at 50 years it's not like we're digging it up and saying, oh, hip hop is still around. No, hip hop is the leading music genre in the world. Only 50 years in, which says a lot. So, if you're young or you don't know, here's a little history for you. Shout out to the 50th anniversary of hiphop.com and the Universal Hip Hop Museum, who followed me recently and probably followed a couple people I know. Y'all doing right. Follow the real ones. We talk about hip hop for real. But for those who don't know, August 11th, 1973 is officially recognized as hip hop's birthday, right? And here's a quick quote from 50 Years of Hip Hop.com. In the rec room of an apartment building on Sedgwick Avenue, NYC, an 18-year-old Clive Campbell, y'all know who that is, throws a back to school party with his younger sister Cindy behind two turntables. Clive, better known as DJ Kool Herc, plays two copies of the same record, a technique known as the merry-go-round, where one moves back and forth from one record to the next, looping the percussion portions of each track to keep the beat alive. And amongst the community of dancers, artists, musicians, and poets, hip hop was born. A house party, a
Mm-hmm.
technique, just to keep that part of a record going. So what we're going to do here for y'all is just break down the history of hip hop from our perspectives, from some facts and history. So, you know, if you feel like you rewrote history, we about to rewrite your shit with the truth. Okay. Uh, but first, we just want to start with our personal stories as it relates to hip hop, our personal beginnings with hip hop. Tone, I'm gonna come to you first, man. When and what was the moment you were first introduced to hip hop and you knew that you were locked in forever? You fell in love with it.
Well, when I fell in love with it, actually 1984, Run DMC self-titled album came out. And my brother, who was 7 years older than me, was DJing locally and stuff like that. So he had all these records and stuff. And I had heard a couple of songs, and we'll get into some songs I heard before Run DMC self-titled album. But that's the album when I recognized, I'm like, you know what? I'm obsessed with it. Because what happened was months and months before the album dropped, my brother also had the singles, Hard Times, and It's Like That. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, I just fell in love with it. But then I heard the self-titled album. You know what I'm saying? And you know, my brother would put all the album covers on the wall and nail them in the wall. You know what I'm saying? We shared a room together, and he had a turntable in the middle of the room, scratching and stuff. And of course, when he used to go out and into the streets and stuff like that, me being a young dude, I would get on there and scratch his shit up. You know what I'm saying? But it was really then when I fell in love with it. And as we speak today about the 50 years and our other experiences in the early 80s, you know, we'll talk about other songs and even the late 70s and how we progressed up to this point. But as far as me answering your question, it's Run DMC's self-titled album. I've told that story before in the past, and that's just what it was, man. I mean, they are the reason why I love this culture, man. It was Run DMC.
Yance, how about you down in the New Orleans area? Your first experiences with hip hop music, the culture, what was it that made you fall in love with it?
Well, for me, radio, not Cool J radio, but actual radio, AM radio to be exact. They were playing all of the records, man. Tone mentioned Run DMC. They was playing Run DMC. They was playing Curtis Blow, you know, all of that stuff. And you know, AM radio, AM radio, it's not that great a reception, but man, I can remember listening to the mix show, trying to record it, trying to find somebody who could record it, because you hearing Roxanne Shantae's Runaway album song, you hearing the real Roxanne, you hearing Roxanne from UTFO, you hearing all of these sounds, and then you had cats breaking and hearing Bambaataa and all of that stuff. I mean, this just a wonderful time to be blessed to have been around during and up through the 50 years as we all three are celebrating it. But yeah, man, AM radio was big, because I mean, being here, it's not like if you there in New York where it's easily accessible. The one good thing about being in New Orleans is a port city too. So I was blessed to have cats in my life from all over, and they would bring music here, and that's how a lot of times I heard a lot of early stuff. And I mean, it's just a love affair ever since. It's never stopped.
That's dope, man. For me, it's from a time that I could barely remember, mainly because I was told about it and I vaguely remember this. But it's Rapper's Delight by Sugar Hill Gang. My mother said I was about 2 years old and I was rapping the lyrics, right? Now, not all of it, right? The part, the catchy part, the catchy hook part of the song. And I know I remember because my father was a DJ, right? He had a lot of records, and not necessarily a hip hop DJ, but probably any DJ from the late 70s, early 80s who probably spun disco and funk,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. And then you saw some of the things that were happening with hip hop. Obviously, Rapper's Delight. You hear what the track is behind them rapping. And I remember he used to play that all of the time. And I think that's how I learned it, just from hearing it. And I think for me, just that love of that song and that hook and that being tied to such an early part of my development as a little kid, which it don't think I'm a crazy guy, because I even remember some shit earlier than that. Don't ask me how. Just remember the moments, and they're like, how the hell you remember that? But it's like flashes of things you remember. You know what I'm saying?
Let me say something also.
Mm.
And I know a lot of hip hop purists is not gonna like this comment, because I know even back, and we're gonna talk about, well, this is about Rapper's Delight and about the Sugar Hill Gang, because I know that Grandmaster Caz, Cold Crush, and a lot of other guys that was around during that time, like, for different reasons, a lot of people wasn't feeling Rapper's Delight at first because it was catchy, it wasn't from the streets. You know what I'm saying? So, but for me, the Sugar Hill Gang and Rapper's Delight was the perfect intro to me nationally for hip hop, because it was fun, it was catchy, it used a sample from a very popular 70s song anyway.
Right.
It was easy for kids, like you said, you were reciting as a toddler basically, but
Right.
it was easy for young people to catch the lyrics and have fun with it. And then you see it's still part, since it was released essentially in 1979, so it's almost part of the disco, the end of the disco era. You know,
Yeah,
so
right.
even with the video. So to me, it was a good transition into everything else that we saw leading up to Grandmaster Flash and Melly Mel and the Message, and shit started getting serious. But for me, it's still fun when you hear the song now, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? It's easy listening, and because what would have happened with hip hop if the first song would have been too aggressive or too much, whatever the case may be. You know what I'm saying? The first song in hip hop can't be The Message.
Right.
Even though The Message might be the most important song, I think, released in '82, everyone knows that's probably the most important song in hip hop history. It shifted hip hop at that time. The verses, Melly Mel verse, is still considered for the time, and even now, one of the greatest verses in hip hop history, etc. But we needed Rapper's Delight. We needed the skating rink. You know what I'm saying? We needed the fair. We needed the amusement parks, whatever the case may be. So I thought it was the perfect song, man. I remember hearing it. Of course, I heard it before I heard Run DMC, but it was still new when I was younger. But I understood Run DMC's self-titled album, even though, you know what I'm saying, I had heard some Treacherous 3 before Run DMC. And of course, we'll get in deeper to the Funkin' 4+1, and that's the joint with Shy-Rock and all that. So we'll talk about some of that. But Sugar Hill Gang, nevertheless, was very vital to, I think, the growth and expansion early on in hip hop. Man, it was important.
Yeah, exactly. And I was a prime example of that, right? The kid at a very young age just being drawn to this song. And I think in a lot of ways, Tony, you make a great point, because when you think about it, it should be a reminder at 50 years of hip hop that this is also hip hop. Hip hop wasn't, and we're going to get into all of it, but hip hop wasn't one genre. It wasn't one type of song, one artist. This is essentially what it was. It was about the party, having fun,
absolutely,
dancing, singing, rapping, whatever it may have been. So let's just get right into it. Let's just get in right into that early time, late 70s, into the 80s, the techniques, basically, that kind of birthed hip hop. Tone, start us off with some of the things that we could look back upon and in the early days of hip hop.
Well, again, early days, it was really hard to hear a lot of music, because the radio was a lot different back then. I mean, they played some songs, but until certain small radio stations started to specialize in like late night playing some rap songs, you didn't get a whole lot of rap on the radio all the time. So you got it in certain. You ran to the radio and you tried to record it when it came on, because you might not hear it again for 7 to 8 hours, or maybe the next day. You know what I mean? So early on, you were just trying to find the music. You know what I'm saying? And then when the small record labels start pushing records out, of course we started collecting stuff like that, man. But one of my early things, just remembering, I'm in North Carolina, you know what I'm saying? So I started seeing some of the older dudes in the neighborhood breakdancing on cardboard boxes. I was like, with big boom boxes. My brother had them because he was DJing. I'm like, man, that's spinning on the back, spinning on the head, and we all jumped into the culture like that, man. And we even, our graffiti in North Carolina, of course, was nothing like the graffiti you saw big in New York. But we was on the bridges and stuff, and we would start writing stuff too and painting stuff too. You know what I'm saying? Down here in North Carolina, so we were starting to embrace the culture. It's coming down south. You know what I'm saying? And the music, and at some point the tours started happening, small tours, of course, back then. But we was just embracing it, man. We graffitiing, like I said, we break dancing, we run into the radio just to get a glimpse of the music. And at some point, MTV played Run DMC, and it was over. You know what I'm saying? So those are some of my early memories, man. At least being here in North Carolina.
All right, and how about you with you hear the music for the first time, you love it. What was the scene for you as far as hip hop when it comes to the culture as a whole, with the DJ and the graffiti and the breakdancing and stuff?
Yeah, well, Tone kind of alluded to it, high school, middle school dances. You had to dance and cats are breaking, cats doing all kind of dance moves that you probably like, what the hell is that? Spinning on their back, spinning on their head, just all of that. So, that's you would see a lot of that. I can remember being in the French Quarter, and they had like break crews used to be out there and be battling and hustling for money while breaking out in the streets in the French Quarter. So you'll see a lot of that. Like I mentioned before, the AM radio. I mean, the early time it was so much about discovery. You know what I mean? Like you saw somebody breaking, and then you go to another party, somebody else is doing it, and then next thing you know, they forming a group of breakers. You might have 10 to 12 cats, figure they get together and they make a group of breakers. Not even nobody really rapping. This is just straight up just b-boying. So those cats that would form those little dance groups, they'd be at dances all over the city, and they made names for themselves. And then I can remember like once that all really took off, then you had people, you see cats beatboxing, you see cats start to kind of MC and DJ and everything like that. As the graffiti stuff, saw that before. I'm gonna tell you, I tried all of the elements. I tried all of it. Look, I can't draw worth of shit, so I wasn't no good. I can't tag nothing that looks cool. I never could. Break dancing, I just couldn't be on the floor. I couldn't do it. I could no bag spinner. Now you can pop lock and stuff like that. I could be off the floor, but see, I was a one trick pony. Like I couldn't get that. I wasn't down there
pretty boy shit. Like I ain't getting on the floor.
Yeah. I couldn't do it. Windmill. I had partners who could do that shit with their eyes closed, and it always, it was just so dope. I always gravitated more to DJing. I thought DJing was something that I immediately felt when I seen somebody do it and kind of started learning and stuff like that. So of all the elements, I'm more partial to DJing than any of the other ones, because it's the only one that I actively really participated in, and stuff like that. So
yeah, man, I think for me it was it took some time, because I recognized hip hop, but not as hip hop, right? It was a thing that was happening. It's a thing that people were doing. You see people older than you, whether it's your brother or family or friends or whatever, who are older than you, who are doing these things, you see them dancing, you see them beatboxing and all that, and you a part of it as well. but
Right.
no one's really, at least early on, really saying we're doing hip hop. Like,
Right.
no
Yeah.
one really,
I wanted to say that too. That's a great point. I don't
right,
remember anybody ever saying this is hip hop. It was just what everybody was doing. Everybody was
right.
having fun, and
It was
then
a
once,
culture,
You
yeah,
living it. You living
right.
it.
And
right,
then once you started hearing that the term hip hop, then okay, that's what this is. This is what I'm really enjoying.
right,
And then once that name was on there, then you really felt a part of it. You were
right,
participating in everything, but once it had a name to it, and you could tell everybody, yeah, this is hip hop. And you can,
right,
if
right,
they didn't know about it, you could kind of teach them the little bit you kind of was
Yep.
learning. So yeah, man, I early on, I don't remember anybody ever really saying hip hop, and it was mostly it was like people would call it break dancing,
And you know
b-boying,
what?
right.
And they
True.
were saying that there's different. Nobody knows the truth, but they're saying that Cowboy from Grandmaster Flash and Melly Mel came up with the term hip hop,
Mm,
but then also doing an interview with Village Voice way back in like '82, Africa Bambaataa was talking about it as if him and some of his crew kind of came up with the term as well. So there's been some conversation about who did the term, just like yes y'all. I think Kid Creole was credited with that. So these early tales of hip hop, I'm sure everyone you got their hand and they want to get want to be acknowledged for their
Right.
contribution, and they all could be right in their own respect, man. But I do want to say something real quick, since you Veg, you gave an opening about of course, hip hop starting in the Bronx and Kool Herc and his sister and everything. But also, I want to give love also from the Bronx again, like I said earlier, to the Funky 4+1, because they are from the Bronx, you know what I'm saying? And they are the
Right.
first rap act with a record deal, and also the first rap act that performed on live TV. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? And their first single, Rapping and Rocking the House, was 1979, just like the Sugar Hill Gang. You know what I'm saying? And then,
Yep.
of course, in 1980, they dropped That's the Joint, which is, now it's in hip hop lore, a classic, but, they are from the early days of the culture, man. And they aren't talked about enough. So I did I do those flowers threads on Twitter, and I did one for Funky 4+1 about a year ago. And every so many months, I retweet it again because there's so many younger people who don't understand the impact of them, and also them being the first in 2 or 3 categories in hip hop that's never talked about.
Right.
And Shy-Rock is actually the queen of hip hop. You know what I'm saying? In terms
Mhm.
of her being the first female MC on record, the first female
Right.
MC on TV, and what they did, everyone is after Shy-Rock. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
look,
So,
real quick,
mhm.
DMC credits Shy-Rock as his favorite MC.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
did.
DMC says kind of his style is after Shy-Rock. So I mean, if
yes, big.
that don't tell you how important Shy-Rock is to the culture as a whole, but namely one of our heroes in DMC, I don't know, what else to tell you. I mean, that's just, he that's how much he loved Shy-Rock. He kind of took his style, so to speak, from her. He just was blown away by the way she rocked the mic.
Absolutely. And also,
Yeah.
she's born in Wilmington, North Carolina. She's raised in the Bronx, but she's born in
Yep.
Wilmington, North Carolina. I'm from North Carolina. I feel that. So I want to also give love to Shy-Rock, man. You know what I'm saying?
Word.
It's
Yes,
Sharon
indeed.
Green, no doubt.
Right. And one of the things early on for me as a kid in New York City, right, trying to being a part of this culture that has these labels, but no one's really using it besides the rappers for the most part on record. And this is for all you PhD hip hop achievers who never been at a park jam but learned about it. I was there. You know what I'm saying? As a kid, you hear about MC Shan talking about out in the park. I was actually there, right? Not all the time because I'm from Brooklyn. But again, like the brothers on this podcast said, it was a part of the culture. It was a thing you did. It was hip to do that. I battled people and breakdancing and all of that. I've done breakdancing, DJing, which I still kind of can do. I can get my wiggles on, no sleep. Uh,
Yeah,
um,
all
and
that.
obviously rapping, you know. And it was just one of those things early on where everybody was doing it. It was cool. At least everybody, you know, around you. It was cool. It was almost like a gang, right? Sometimes you have a family gathering, and the two, you know, teenagers come in and they dressed like a group, and you like,
Mhm.
what the fuck, what, you know, with their Easter breakdance
That's
out,
how it was.
right?
It was about outfits, and costumes back then.
Right,
Oh
costumes. They
shit!
come in with the matching hats, with
Yeah,
the,
your
you know,
crew,
the
your crew.
airbrush shirts, and you like,
Airbrusher.
and you know you're gonna get a show at some point when they put some hip hop on, you
Yeah,
know. But yeah, man, like for people watching who weren't around during those times, it literally was just something that was done because there was no internet, there was no, you know, oh well, let me go read about it. You know, it was just around you, and you did it, and the music was the driving force. The DJ
Mhm.
was so much important, and let's get into that real quick because just like Tone mentioned, a couple of, you know, hip hop artists who set the trend and the foundation. Considering where we are today, the DJ was extremely important, if not more popular than the MC
Absolutely.
at
Yes,
this
indeed.
point in time. Um, and Tone, real quick, just talk about how, again, when we talked about the history, we talked about DJ Kool Herc, right? That's where it started. We know DJ Grandmaster Flash. But what was the point in which the MC became one and one with the DJ, or just as important, even though the DJ was kind of like the cornerstone of hip hop?
Well, I think that actually happened in 1982 with the Message, because I mean
Mm,
it's Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, right? Because
right,
Grandmaster Flash is that DJ, he's one of the pioneer DJs in the culture and still is. But during that time, when they did the Message and then White Lines and stuff like that, it shifted lyrically. You know, Melly Mel, as far as being the front man, he was so potent at that time lyrically. It started to shift towards, okay, I want to what okay, you scratching those records, that's cool. But what this dude is saying, a child is born with no state of mind. Okay, wow. You know what I'm saying? Because
right,
before that, it's like, okay, hibbity hop, whatever. And then even with Curtis Blow with the breaks, it's like it's a basic song with Curtis Blow and the breaks. He's just having fun. He's probably one of the first rap stars. Speaking of DJ Run was actually Run DMC. A lot of people don't understand that before he was part of Run DMC, he was Curtis Blow's DJ. He's
yep,
DJ Run. He was scratching and doing all of that. That's who Run is for Run DMC. You know what I'm saying? So, but you know, he's at that time, well, Curtis Blow was actually bigger than the DJ, but it really shifted to me with Grandmaster Flash and Melly Mel. You know what I'm saying? That after that, of course, a lot of MCs started to take the forefront, because you started at some point, you had Ice-T, you know what I'm saying, on the West Coast, who at one point he was bigging up DJs, but he took that microphone and started really being like the hosting parties and hosting events and stuff, and really MCing the situation, you know what I'm saying? And so all of that started taking place around 82, 83, where the MCs started taking control of it. Even though Jam Master Jay was, you know, the fixture in hip hop, Run's personality and DMC style started to be more important than just Jay. Even though Jay had solo joints on the albums and stuff, it was still about the
right.
MC around 83, 84. So that's kind of when that shift started to happen.
Yeah, and really quick to piggyback off of that, when you think about what you said, right? Like Run from Run DMC was a DJ first.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's kind of how he was known, similar to Redman, right? Redman was a DJ
Yeah.
first. The DJ was the backbone. Even the fact that you mentioned Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, right? DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, right? The DJ was the dude. He was the sole
Mm-hmm.
controller. The MC was more so the backup. But to Tone's point, um, Melly Mel set a tone to say that rappers can use their voice to talk more, or MCs use their voice to talk about more than just rocking the party.
Oh yeah,
And
look. And also, Veg, real quick, just a shout out, man. You know, since we're talking about DJs too, just give a shout out to DJ Hollywood as well. You know what I'm saying? Because he's definitely one of the first disc jockeys and DJs way back then, man. And you know, so we just want to make sure we acknowledge that brother DJ Hollywood as well, because he's from that time period, man. It's very important to the culture.
Absolutely. Yinz, coming to you real quick. Early 80s, right? Hip hop is a thing, it's a culture. We all doing it, we're dressing like it. You see stars of today, like Tone mentioned, Ice-T. There's video where you could watch him break dance.
Yeah.
There's video where you could watch Vin Diesel seriously break dancing on some hip hop stuff. You know what I'm saying? For you at that time, as the music is starting to, especially lyrically, starting to make MCs bigger, and you know, and we're talking maybe like mid 80s or whatever. What was it like to see that shift? Was there excitement around more rappers with record deals coming out?
You mean it like the shift from the more call and response type to actual like song
right
structure
to the
kind of
Run
stuff?
DMCs, the LL Cool J's, the Kool Moe D's. Right.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about sucker MCs, I mean, that shit was a clinic at that time. It's still a clinic to this day. But I mean,
absolutely, man.
You go from, like the hip, the hop, the hippie, and then you go to 2 years ago, a friend of mine. That shit.
That's like say some MC rhymes. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, and that shit was like futuristic shit, because nobody was really doing it like that. So yeah, once that started happening, people were like, damn, I'm really loving it now. Because at first I think it was more the music that we all loved, and it wasn't necessarily what the MC or the rapper was saying so much. But then Run DMC, it was
about it's about the break beats at
right. You heard those grooves a lot of times, and if you didn't, you was like, damn, what is that? What record is that from? Because I mean, doing the merry-go-round, like you said, that shit was heavy, man. Like that. When people started to know how to do that consistently, that you were seeing that a lot. It wasn't so much of what we have now, turntablism. It wasn't there just yet, but that in and of itself was turntablism. That merry-go-round or back spinning, the records and stuff, all of that shit, man, was just so mind-blowing early on. You couldn't get enough of it if you was really into it. You was like searching. You was, any of your friends, that's what y'all talked about at lunchtime. That's that's what y'all, when y'all got home, y'all was like everybody had their radio on, trying to find that song, or trying to, hopefully one of your friends had the cassette deck and they could record it if you couldn't get it. So yeah, man, I think when the MC really started saying stuff, it changed a lot. It was, I think more people outside of the culture possibly kind of paused and like, wait a minute, what's going on here? So
let me also jump in real quick again, because I initially said I was talking about Melle Mel and Run and things like that, and I'm glad you brought up Suck MCs, but I will be remiss if I didn't say there was a slight shift before that as well, with Kool Moe Dee and Treacherous 3, you know what I'm saying? Because they was real lyrical MCs for their time. Yeah. And Moe Dee, of course, the world famous Harlem World, like 1981, he crushed Busy Bee. Busy Bee was a party called Response Dude, and he's important to the culture because that was fun at the time, you know what I'm saying? Wild Style and stuff like that. But Moe Dee was really chopping rhymes up, you know what I'm saying? And he's actually like, and Rakim has said before that he was one of his biggest influences, you know what I'm saying? Because Moe Dee became the guy who introduced like intelligence in hip hop. You know what I'm saying? He was an intellectual MC, and that kind of started in 81. And of course, they had joints in 80. The Treacherous 3 had Heartbeat and some other joints, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, Mo D is one of the first of the trio of the Lyrical Kings with Melle Mel and Grandmaster Caz. So we know there's different level eras of Lyrical Kings and trilogies, and the first one being Grandmaster Caz, who didn't get the credit for Rapper's Delight because they stole some of his rhymes, and of course Melle Mel and Kool Moe Dee, man. So I do want to make sure I acknowledge those brothers from that first wave.
Yeah, and one quick thing too, we was talking about the DJ. Let's not forget Grand Wizard Theodore.
Of course,
absolutely. Grand Wizard Theodore is credited with inventing what we know as the scratch.
Yep.
You know, as with anything else we're talking about, it's debatable on who done this, when, and everything like that. But you know, as far as we know in the culture, Grand Wizard Theodore is the man that invented the scratch. One of our founding DJ fathers as well. So big shout out to Grand Wizard Theodore, and big thanks to him.
Absolutely. And one of the things related to MCs that you know, was prevalent in the 70s, in the late 70s, mid to late 70s. You can go to YouTube and see him doing it, saying it, and all of that is battling, right?
Yeah.
Like battling along with the breakdancing and the MCing and the DJing and the fashion was definitely, as an MC, once lyrics started to become, you know, a part of, you know, matching yourself against another MC, battling was born. Me and Tone did a episode on the whole battle between Busy B and Kool Moe Dee, and how it kind of shifted the culture as far as what was dope, what was the dopest and most acceptable from an MC, you know, when it came to skill. And for some of you who argue on Twitter all the time, like such the GOAT, such the GOAT, this person the GOAT, remember, these rules were established because of early on just the crowd reaction and what the crowd accepted as dope universally. So real quick, I wanted to talk to y'all about, because I know from a New York perspective, those hip hop rules from an MC were like golden. Some of y'all still abide by those rules, which some of them don't even exist anymore. But nevertheless, there's a reason why he feels that way, because he grew up in a time where you just didn't do these things. You know, you had to be original. Even your tagging with graffiti, right? There was no biting and doing that. Yeah, the way you scratch, the records you looped at a show, your set, whatever it may be, there was all these hip hop rules. Tone, what do you think about the early days of the hip hop rules of being original? Did it hold some people back, or was there a good reason why we abided by these rules?
Nah, man, look, the rules are the rules. You know what I'm saying? No biting allowed. You know what I'm saying? That was from, you know, again, to Yent's point a few minutes ago, Run DMC, they had a song called Suck MCs. You know what I'm saying? This is early 80s. He already saying, look, your style, don't bite my style or you whack. You know what I'm saying? So, and just like when Kool Moe Dee was dissing Busy B, you know what I'm saying? Put that Bob to the Bob bullshit on hold. You know what I'm saying? Gonna get right down to the nitty grit. I'm gonna tell y'all right now, well, you ain't shit. They're the NC cock that you don't hug. You even bitch style from the love bug. You know what I'm saying? So we, you know, and then KRS One said you gotta have style, learn to be original. Everybody's gonna want to diss you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, yo, the way you rap, yo, the way you dress, unless you was in a crew. If you was in a crew and y'all had a, you know what I'm saying? Because a lot of gangs had crews back then, breakdancing and stuff like that. But if you was an individual, you had to have the way you dress, your style. You can't bite off nobody. And you know, that goes all the way up to this current hip hop. When cats come out and they remind you too much of somebody, they be like, oh, man, I done seen that before. Or that new dude from Atlanta sound like Future. You know what I'm saying? The designer sound like Future, or whoever the case may be. Or this person sound like Jeezy. This person sound like T.I. So it never stopped, whether you up north, down south, out west. You know what I'm saying? If you out west, you can't sound like DJ Quick.
Nope.
You know what I'm saying? Like, he biting quick, he biting short, he biting E40. You know what I'm saying? So the originality started in day one in hip hop, and it still has the same prevalence right now in the culture. Never changed.
And really quick, Jens, before I come to you, just to give a recent example that was unearthed. Snoop Dogg did an interview, and he originally wanted Nipsey to play him, and I think the Tupac movie. And Nipsey was like, "Man, I want people to know me for me. I don't want them to know me for playing you." And he didn't want them to draw those comparisons, right? Because he wanted to be himself. That's hip hop. Like,
no doubt.
you know, whether you like it or not, that's hip hop.
One thing real quick. Now, there is a thing of paying homage that some people take out of context.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? You know, Snoop Dogg paid homage a lot of Dottie on Doggy Style to Slick Rick because Slick Rick is so influential with a lot of young MCs. That wasn't biting. I'm sure Slick Rick loved it, actually. You know, he was paying homage. Jay-Z has a million rhymes of his own. Whenever he pays homage to Biggie, because him and Biggie was closer than people thought. And I debunked any of that stuff on Twitter before and on podcasts before. So I don't need to go there. He was paying homage to Big on some rhymes on purpose. You know what I'm saying? So paying homage ain't the same as biting somebody's style, especially when you're a highly skilled, one of the most skilled MCs like Jay, or just a dope individual and dope MC like Snoop Dogg. He wasn't biting Slick Rick. He was showing him love because he actually loves Slick Rick's style.
Right.
Let's be clear.
Yents. So for you, man, the rules of hip hop, you know, you had your own rule. I'm not getting on that goddamn floor and spinning on my back.
Oh shit.
What was it like for you to see, you know, battles? You know, people, did you ever see somebody lose? Did you ever see someone bite and get called out?
Well, look, first and foremost, biting and being original are the two top of the rules, in my opinion. Now, yeah, I've seen people lose in battles, and I've always I don't know about biting so much because, you know, I mean, a motherfucker could say you biting just as another way to diss you. So all it, you know, I mean, if it's a blatant bite and everybody knows it, then of course everybody knows it. But I mean, for me to just say you biting, that don't always hold weight unless there's some real concrete evidence, in my opinion. But yeah, oh man, watching break dancers battle, like I said, the school dances, or you know, if you're out just in the street, you know, it'll be a basketball game 1 second, the next thing you know, the radio comes out, and in the middle of the street, you know, pop locking and shit, you know, doing that. So yeah, I mean, all of that to prove yourself and test yourself, you know, because I mean, you know, nobody wanted to be called a biter with the way you dressed. If you went into another neighborhood and you was dressing like them other cats from the other neighborhood, might be some, you know, repercussions and consequences over some shit like that, you know. But yeah, I think biting is the biggest one. And to kind of hop on the Snoop Dogg Lottie Dottie, yeah, that was paying homage, but it was how can I say this nicely?
You just said it.
It wasn't. It was terrible, but yeah, it was homage. There was no biting. There was no biting in it, but yeah, he could have just
love the song.
He could have just said, "I love you, Slick Rick. I thank you for everything you've done for MCs." He didn't have to.
Yes. So needless to say, Lottie Dottie, I mean, that joint is your least favorite song on Doggy Style.
Right.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah. That was horrible. I hate to say, I don't like saying that kind of stuff publicly like this, but yeah, that was horrible.
Well, look, so let's get into like a lot of because this is early on in hip hop, and now as far as like recording artists go, and you know, there's no biting, so there's not many duplicates. Dana Dane.
Dana Dane with fame.
Right, but Dana Dane was hot. We loved him.
I used to call him the fake Slick Rick, but go ahead.
Right. we all loved it, but man,
I did
them
like
90s
Cinderella and Nightmares and all of that though.
yeah,
Yeah.
like he had them tails. But yeah, that's what I mean. Like now we get into a point where now we have these different identities for these MCs, and because it's hip hop is incredibly young at this point, everybody who breaks through to become popular is something different or new or sound from somewhere else, right? Like for example, and we did an episode on these guys, the Fat Boys. A lot of the rappers you saw, none of them looked like that. The Disco Three, let's say
Disco
that
Disco
Three.
first.
3.
Right. Let's say that first and
That's
foremost.
two different. Yep. Disco 3 is totally different from the Fat Boys. But
Right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like when you look at them, when you look at Slick Rick, right? This is
Yep.
somebody, early on in hip hop, if you let my young ass
I need to
tell
grab
that,
something real quick. Keep going.
yeah, go ahead. He had the Prince shirt and the Prince chair at the same time. But nah, for real, when you look at it, right? Like especially in New York around that time, everything that's new is like, yo, what borough is he from? What borough is he from? What, and here's Slick Rick from a whole other country.
Right.
Oh wow, Tone.
The Fat Boys greatest hits tape right here.
A
I thought
tape.
I'd bring that out real quick.
What is a tape? Holy
A tape,
shit.
Yeah, that's the
all
Fat
that
Boys
you
greatest
see.
hits tape right there, man. And this is the great adventures of Slick Rick tape right here.
Oh shit. All right.
Yeah.
But yeah, like when you think about
We'll get into that. Go ahead.
Classic. When you think about all of the different and we're basically moving into mid to late 80s. But when you think about all the different styles now, because now you're getting different vibes from different hip hop artists, from LL to Run DMC to the Fat Boys to Curtis Blow still hanging around.
Yep.
Then here comes Kane and KRS and Rakim. Tone, let me come to you first. Now it's like it's growing, and the skill level is the bar is being raised to a point where it's becoming just to us hip hop fans, it was almost just as popular as people see it now to us back then when the golden age was coming.
Look, man, just LL for me is that midpoint because he still had the swag of the early guys, but he still had a little bit of something for the future as well. But junior high school, man, Eric B. as president came out, and that changed everything for me because I hadn't heard nobody rap like that before. So Eric B. as president came out in '86, and then this seminal album right here, Paid in Full, came out. This is the original tape. It's old. I got a box of old tapes in my basement. I brought a few up here to my guest bedroom. Paid in Full dropped, man, and Criminal Minded dropped, both like I think the spring of '87, man. And for me, rap was never the same. But to your point earlier, every one of the guys in that second golden era were totally different. Rakim didn't rap like KRS-One. KRS-One didn't rap like Kool G Rap. Kool G Rap didn't rap like Kane. Kane didn't rap like Master Ace or whoever else was popping at the time. But then NWA was coming at the exact same time. You know what I'm saying? Eazy-E album had dropped. And then all of a sudden, the Straight Outta Compton dropped. Ice Cube and MC Ren were amazing MCs, but they didn't sound like, KRS-One and Rakim or anything like that. They didn't sound like Ice-T, because Ice-T is like the West Coast, like LL in terms of early star for that coast. You know what I'm saying? But everyone had an original style, original voice, the way they dressed. Biz Markie, shout out, rest in peace to Biz Markie as well. A very important fixture during that time with the storytelling and stuff like that too. But man, it was just everyone was original. And then they started bringing in different aspects of life with the 5% and things of that nature. So hip hop started expanding the subject matter. You know what I'm saying? And Rakim rhyming when he did Check Out My Melody, the rumor was they said Marlon Marl was like, man, what is this shit? You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, why you rapping so fucking long and slow? You know what I'm saying? And they're like, that ain't gonna work. Which we know now, Check Out My Melody was studied by MCs for the next 20, 30 years. You know what I'm saying? But that was the originality of that time, man. Everyone wanted to stamp their own sound. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And 87, 88, he had Chuck D with the powerful voice. You know what I'm saying? And they're probably the most militant group ever in hip hop. If you go back and look at Public Enemy's songs and videos, you know what I'm saying? Can't trust it. Got slavery stuff on it. You know what I mean? So, but nevertheless, man, everyone was
Right.
finding their own identity, man, and because they were so sharp in what they were doing, and I know we'll get to the 90s. It opened up the floodgates for this 90s era that people are crazy about and reminisce and talk about on Twitter every day. But if you don't have
Mm.
that 87 to 89, you don't have these 90s.
Exactly. Yentz, similar question for you,
Mhm.
but we all know it wasn't all just East Coast, you know,
No,
and,
no.
and Slick Rick wasn't the only one outside of a New York or a Philly that was doing things, man. There was the West Coast, like Tone mentioned earlier. There was Ice-T, and then there was the most dangerous group in America, NWA. What did you think as a fan of hip hop? You know, seeing acts like Run DMC and LL Cool J and everything from the early beginnings of hip hop to seeing something like Straight Outta Compton or Easy or
Or Too Short.
Ice-T,
Life is too short.
Too
Right, too
Short,
short.
right?
Well, I'll tell you like this: if going from Run DMC and hearing Dope Man,
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first time I heard NWA, I was like, God damn, they doing some cursing. Like I never heard, you know what I mean? And it's true, up to that point, at least for me, I never heard anybody, I mean,
Nope.
just, you know, they was like curse word masters. Every other word, it was like, God damn. Like I can remember playing that. I never had the album yet, but I had it on a cassette. Somebody had dubbed for me, and I can remember never knowing what it was. And my parents had heard me playing hip hop music, you know, before, so it wasn't nothing new for me to be, you know, maybe doing my homework, got the radio or something like that. I remember I put that shit on when mom was washing dishes. Boy, my mom would turn around like, "What the hell? Turn that off! What is that?" And
Right.
I can remember being like embarrassed, like, damn, you know, I mean, of course, I snuck listening to Richard Pryor and stuff like that, but you knew what you was getting. You know,
Right.
you already knew full well when you know people's like, man, you got to listen to this. You heard what you heard, but like NWA, that shit was like, oh my god, that coming, like I said, coming from Run DMC to NWA, it was a shock as far as the cursing goes. Now the skill level was top notch. MC Ren and Ice Cube, you know, I mean, even Eazy-E to an extent, although he didn't write them, he still spit them in a manner that you would have never known until he said, Ice Cube writes the rhymes that I say.
I said,
If
yeah.
he never said that, nobody would have questioned whether he was actually writing that. So,
Right.
you know, I mean, it's just, man, it was crazy to hear that Dope Man or what was the shit.
Oh, fuck
6
the
in the
police.
morning? Fuck the
Well, you know,
police.
yeah, I mean, fuck the police, but there was another song, "A Bitch Is a Bitch." You know,
Yeah.
you when you hearing
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, you know, it's like, damn, you never heard anything like that. And then, you know, shortly after NWA, you started, you know, you heard Ghetto Boys, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So now we was talking about biting and homage and all of that. I can remember cats hearing Ghetto Boys like, damn, they doing the same thing NWA's doing. Yeah, they
Mhm.
were, but they were from Houston. They weren't in Houston trying to rhyme about Compton. They were in Houston rhyming about what was going on in Fifth Ward, their
Right.
area. And then, you know, that shit just, man, that was like a spread. That spread like wildfire. So-called gang. I don't like saying gangster rap, but so-called gangster rap, that took off like wildfire. I mean, we kind of all know why, you know, certain
Mhm.
things get pushed and everything like that. But like, you know, it didn't matter where you were from. Every section of the United States, they had at least one or more groups that kind of followed in that NWA formula and just told it from their perspective, from where they were.
Right, and we're definitely going to get into that with the next section. Just real quick for me, looking at how many different MCs from different areas were now starting to pop up with dope music, dope production, all representing hip hop. For me, it was just like an explosion of fandom for me to
Right.
you know you just hearing, I loved Slick Rick. I remember I didn't have the cassette, I didn't have the vinyl. My brother was a DJ. He had the vinyl. He made a tape for me, you know what I'm saying? He made a tape for me, with the album. Uh and I played it to death. Same thing with, Public Enemy, and Criminal Minded, and all those albums like that. Uh but it's just a testament to how hip hop was growing amongst the fans, amongst music, and the acceptance. Even though as we get into this next era, it wasn't accepted and it wasn't pushed in the way we say that stuff now, because a lot of record labels were afraid to take that chance on the controversy that came with groups like NWA and anybody who rap like that, because like today, they kind of wanted the safer acts. So let's get into the 90s, right? Early 90s, mid 90s into the late 90s. I I I look at this time as a time where we started to define eras. Maybe not at the time, but as we look back, because in the 80s, everything was so new. We were doing everything was coming out, and we were just in it. No one thought about like, oh, well, the early 70s was, the silver age. Like nobody said shit
Mhm.
like that, right? That's just Twitter will make you think that shit existed. No one
Right.
talked like that. Just y'all, just y'all now. Uh, but early 90s, man, and gangster rap is taking off. But then you had these other groups coming out and these other artists like A Tribe Called Quest, and you have solo Ice Cube and all these different acts that are coming out. Tone, early 90s, definitely on the West Coast, from Ruthless Records and everything that became popular, to the East Coast going with more wordplay in their music. What did you think about that transition? Because obviously we're getting older, so we're seasoned at that point when it comes to hip hop because of the real golden age of the 80s. What was your feeling with hip hop, man? Were you just like, now I'm just a vet, I'm a Jedi master in this shit?
As far as like my experience at that time, like we talking like 89, 90 type.
Yeah, because like early on, you're kind of enamored by what you're seeing and you're doing it, but now you're coming of you're at a certain age where like you've been in it for a while.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
saying,
for me, if I get around 90 or something like that, I'm in high school now. So yeah, I do think I used to call myself DJ T Love at the time. And I posted little
Ah,
pictures on my stuff on Twitter before.
ah,
I was making mixtapes, man. I had so many tapes I was making and stuff like that. You couldn't tell me nothing at the time because, of course, my favorite group was Run DMC. Then it shifted to EPMD. You know what I'm saying? Then, of course, 1990 era, it shifted to Tribe Called Quest. After I heard Left My Wild El Segundo, then Bonita. You know what I'm saying? Then I was like, oh, then Can I Kick It? I said, well, Tribals, they my favorite now. You know what I'm saying? So, but
mhm,
during that time, that creativity shifted too, because at one point you had, NWA and Public Enemy were like polar opposites, right? And then at the same time, you was getting other gangster rap on the West Coast and even in Texas. But then you start getting the creative, like Corky, De La Soul, the Jungle Brothers right before them. You know what I'm saying? And Tribe, of course. So you had the native tongue movement starting. You know what I'm saying? And it was more of the, I don't want to say conscious hip hop, but more earthly, maybe somewhat conscious a little bit, even though Fife Dog and a few others, if you look to their lyrics, they damn sure weren't conscious. But nevertheless, the sampling and stuff made people think it was more conscious hip hop. Maybe it was because of Jungle Brothers, I don't know. But at the same time, you also had the African Medallion era with Poor Righteous Teachers and X Clan and and the Brand Nubians and stuff. So man, you had a lot of different facets now, a lot of different pockets of hip hop you know what I'm saying, popping up. You know, even down south in Florida, you know, you had the 2 Live crew. You know, even before that era, you know, in the late 80s or whatever. And of course, they changed hip hop with the censoring and with Uncle Luke and all that. That's another whole story for another day. But, you know, I felt like I knew a lot about hip hop at the time because I was so engulfed in it, man. Like I walked around with my Walkman and my headset all the time with my EPMD tape, you know what I'm saying? And then around 93, you know what I'm saying, I copped the Black Moon Enter the Stage from my cousin, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, and that was it, man. I was stuck. But I loved it. And I felt like I knew a lot about it because, like I tell people on Twitter now, if you say you love hip hop, you should do the research. Well, I was starting to get the little magazines or anything that had music in it, Jet magazine, whatever. They talk about Big Daddy Kane on the Jet magazine. I wanted to read the article about Kane. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to read the article about, you know, LL Cool J and, you know, and all this stuff like that. So, yeah, man, I was studying it even back then. And I felt like I knew a lot about it because I put the time in it to learn the culture.
Right.
There was so much going on with the culture. It was exploding.
It was exploding. And Yentz, coming to you, you know, you see this transition. Now we in the 90s, and you know how people are, you know, a new decade's here. You just feel like it's a turning point for hip hop. And it was in a lot of ways, because now you have a new crop of MCs who are doing some different things. To Tone's point, for you, like where were you at this point in your life? Not just personally, but just as a music fan and a hip hop fan, as you see the game is changing.
Yeah, well, when the 90s came around, you know, hip hop, you could get hip hop at the record store easily during this time. They had started having like a little you know, section, you know, so
Right.
you could go to that section and get it, although sometimes the section was kind of fucked up because they didn't know what they was doing still. But you know, you would find all of these records, and like you would see so much stuff that you never even heard of. And a real quick thing about the music that I think we all kind of participated in this was the liner notes. That's for me, the liner notes was how you kind of got a leg up on the next group. Like if PE shouting out, you know, LONS, you're like, well, who the hell is LONS? Who is that? Right? And then when you hear the PTA, and then that pops up, you're like, I need to grab that shit. PE shouting them out, they must be dope. Right? So I mean, if you remember PE, they have a big long ass shout out like in their tapes and everything. So you would read all this, like, who is this, and then next thing you know, that started popping up in your local record shop and everything like that, and then you would get it, and you know, it would be dope. A lot of that stuff early on was so dope, man. And then like during this time, a lot of record pools. I can remember being in record pools and getting things, and it would be stuff that I never even heard of, but through the record pool, you know, you getting it. And then, you know, some shit you heard it, I don't really care for that, but then you would get some gems out of that, you know, 12 inches and stuff like that. It was just, man, it was such a great time because there were so many groups coming out, and the music wasn't, you know, lacking. It was all strong, in my opinion. You know, of course, you had groups that you might not have liked as much as the others, but as a whole, I think, you know, it was just strong, and it was a lot of it to be listened to at that time. You started hearing on FM radio. Instead of, you know, before it was AM. I'm hearing all the fucking crackling and hissing and shit. I don't know what they, you know, you can't make a good tape off of that a lot of times, but that's what we had. But then when it got on the FM, you know, you got the clearer sound. You was able to get it and everything like that. So yeah, man, it was just fucking plentiful. Plentiful is a big word as far as hip hop.
Let me just really quick, because I didn't really get into it, but the good segue is hip hop radio in New York City. Obviously, I mean, most people nowadays have heard the stories of like Mr. Magic and Red Alert and them basically having shifts on FM radio. But there were ABOs or shows that did just as much hip hop, if not more, like Special K and Teddy Ted, where you were getting exclusives. And what people do not understand today, the fellas already said it, but I don't think you understand. It was like going fishing when you wanted to hear something exclusive. It was like a badge of honor to be the one that recorded the show last night. Have evidence of the record that no one has heard, but this DJ played it, right? And you were the man because everybody wanted a copy, and you know what I'm saying,
Right.
And I know for me in early days, you know, we used to stay up and listen to all that Mr. Magic because it was how we heard, especially me being younger because I wasn't in the club. So it was how I heard what was new. Everything didn't have a video, right? Everything wasn't on a record shelf. Or with an official release, right? Maybe it was like a white label on a record shelf. But in the 90s, even still, they increased how much hip hop you heard on the BLS or other stations like that in New York City. Hot 97 wasn't around just yet. Hot 97 was a game changer for hip hop in New York because now it was a radio station completely dedicated to hip hop and R&B, but mostly hip hop. But before then, it was scarce, you know. It was, and even then, with Hot 97's playlist, if you really wanted to hear some exclusives, you had to try to catch Pete Rock and Marley Marl, Future Flavors, where you're like, yo, that's not on a mixtape, that's not in rotation, but Pete Rock just played it. What is that?
Right.
And those early days, you know, Stretch and Bobbito, right? You hear it some before some of these guys even have albums out. There's no Illmatic out. There's no 36 Chambers out. Jay-Z, Reasonable Doubt is years later, right? But you hear these cats up at this station with Stretch and Bobbito freestyling, you know, at these times. And, you know, it kind of, to your point, you know, there was so much happening. There's the mixtape game bubbling, right? In New York, like with Ron G and Kid Capri. And it was just so much to try to grasp, including what Tone mentioned, right? There was the Source magazine. The Source magazine did not start in 1995, niggas. Didn't start in 96 either. Right? That was probably the height.
Yeah.
But it was around. Word Up magazine, Right On. All that hanging pictures on my walls, everybody did that. You know, whether it was your sister or females in your family that put up pictures of Michael Jackson with the yellow sweater. I swear to God, every woman back then had that shit on their wall. But you know what I mean? It was all a part of the culture, and everybody was absorbing everything about it. One of the things that I definitely want to highlight, that to me became more of a resurgence in a different way in the 90s, and obviously we're going to get into that other golden era, was film. Because to Tone's point, what Tone said earlier about hip-hop exploding, film played a role early on, and we've done episodes. I hate to burst your bubble, but we've been covering a lot of this stuff. Y'all haven't been paying attention. But Crush Groove, right? Wild Style, Breaking, you name it. Just every Fat Boys movies, like, you know what I'm saying? All these Tougher Than Leather, even though we, you know, whatever. But nevertheless, these were our heroes on the TV screen. Something that was local.
And you know what? Then after those hip hop inspired movies, hip hop artists started being the face of movies like Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society. You even had New Jack City was still hip hopish, even though Western wasn't rappers. You know what I'm saying? So you still had that shifting on. Juice had Tupac. He was starting his career and things of that nature. So to your point, it exploded onto the big screen.
Right. and open the lane, right? Because a lot of people like to think, you know, hip hop MCs acting in movies is something that also started in the 90s, but no, not really. You know,
And look, Will Smith is from hip hop, people.
he's from hip
Exactly
hop.
right. No
Fresh
question.
Prince is not a show, not to us.
No.
He's from
You
hip
know,
hop.
right? It's a brand new phone.
No doubt.
And keep his wife name out your mouth, or you won't get slapped.
That's right.
Right. So let's get into it, man. Let's get into the era that Tone gotta keep like putting cats in their place because they're trying to rewrite history and act like hip hop started there with those albums. The other golden era, East Coast, West Coast, from Pac to the Wu to Nas, Black Moon, Tone, that era of the 90s, mid to I would say mid 90s, right? Like maybe 93, 96, if you just count those 3 years. Man, where are you in your life? And as a hip hop fan, now you're really seasoned, but the game is completely different than what it used to be.
And I'm at the I'm at 11th, 12th grade. I'm about to go to college in about a year or two from now. I mean, I'm older now, so you can't tell me nothing. But real quick, on a quick note, Jermaine Dupri releasing that Totally Crossed Out with Criss Cross in 1992. A lot of people need to understand, even though they was like young kids or whatever, they went four times platinum, and jumping all that was huge. They still play jump at some sports events. A lot of kids back in 92, 93, young kids were wearing their clothes backwards. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, Criss Cross was a phenomenon. You know what I'm saying? So Jermaine Dupri was the first one, you know, really exploded in the Atlanta area. And of course, we get into 94, the Outkast Unplayalistic. Outkast changed the game. And we already know how I feel about Outkast being possibly the greatest rap group of all time, etc. But, man, 93 to 96 is 3 of the most potent years of hip hop, because of course in 93 you got Snoop Dogg drop Doggy Style, which is the biggest album in hip hop at the time. He's the biggest person in hip hop in 1993, following 1992's Chronic by Dr. Dre, that I've tell people all the time shifted not only just West Coast hip hop, but shifted hip hop in general. You know what I'm saying? Q-Tip said that hearing the Chronic, it inspired him for the Midnight Marauders, the same way Dre said that, you know, he was inspired by, you know what I'm saying, Low End Theory. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I mean, those 3 years, man, of course, underground New York exploded, as you know, vague with Black Moon, Enter the Stage, the 36 Chambers. I mean, those are grungy basement rap, you know what I'm saying? And then, of course, Warren G at some point in like 94, whatever, with, you know, he was with Def Jam, and he's a West Coast guy from LBC. You know what I'm saying? Helped saving Def Jam with like $4 million for Regulate. You know what I'm saying? And then, of course, we know 1994, April, I believe, Nas drops Illmatic. The end of that year, Biggie drops Ready to Die. And hip-hop is never the same again. You know what I'm saying? We get to 1996, and for me, 1996 is potentially the second or third greatest year in hip-hop history to me. You know, so I think we lost Vegas for a minute, yes. But, yeah, so I tell people all the time, top to bottom, outside of 1988, I might have to put 1996 second. Then I might put 87 and 93 to 98. You know what I'm saying? As far as for me personally, man. So, man, during that time, bro, I mean, it was so much music, and the South was killing. People got to understand. Yeah, UGK, 8-Ball, MJG. You know what I'm saying? The Ghetto Boy is still hot. Vague, what I was saying was, you know, at the same time we talking about 1996 is one of the dopest years of hip hop. You know, at the same time, you got Riding Dirty with UGK. You got 8-Ball, MJG. You got other groups down south. You got the Goody Mob from the drop Soul Food 95, which I would say, man, top 5 maybe Southern album all time. Soul Food. It's a flawless, perfect album, and really, the same way someone in Queens will look at the infamous album from Mobb Deep is the same way people in Atlanta look at Soul Food. You know what I'm saying? Same way they look at, you know, Doggy Style or something like that on the West Coast, man. So, I mean, the South really exploded in the mid-90s, man, and start pushing. And really, they never look back. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, mid 90s was something special, man.
What about you, Jens, man? It's the mid 90s now, and it seems like across the board, no matter where you're from, the producers are coming with it, the MCs are coming with it, and it feels like a changing of the guard. What did you think about at least that time from like 93 to 96?
Oh man, it just the amount of music that was dropping, the quality of the music that was dropping. It didn't matter what area of the United States you were from. Every region was represented well.
Yep.
Like Tone said, the South really started, like, it was bubbling big time. It wasn't just local anymore. You started getting, kind of nationwide on a lot of stuff like that. These cats was touring around the states and everything. So, you wasn't just hearing your local group locally. You was seeing them being featured in Source or XXL, stuff like that. So all of the hip hop media even blew up because the music had grown and blew up so much. So you had all of those publications popping up, and there were articles on, you could, if you went to the Source, you was getting like a East Coast kind of friendly magazine. Then you had, I don't know if y'all ever heard of a magazine called Murder Dog. You ever heard of that magazine?
Yep, I remember.
That's kind of like a West Coast style magazine. So
yeah,
if you wanted to read on the underground West Coast cast, you might have the Murder Dog magazine and stuff like that, and it was putting you up on new albums that you might not have ever seen being looked at in the Source or an XXL. So it was a lot of magazines. They didn't stick around long as the Source or as XXL, but for that time, that we're speaking of, you had a lot of different publications that were writing articles and put out magazines monthly. So
right.
Yeah, during that time, man, it was like, I mean, to say special is kind of an understatement, especially, during that time. Yeah, I'm older, you more involved as far as how you represent yourself within the culture. You talking to a lot more people, you hearing the music, you seeing billboards and stuff with cats on it that you would have probably never seen early on. So it just was like crazy. Like you would never, coming from early 80s to then mid 90s, late 90s, all you could do is look around and smile if you from the earlier areas. Like, wow, I would have never imagined, hip hop artists being actors, hip hop artists having sitcoms,
right,
and doing well. Not just just on there. They're not just like on the sitcom as themselves. They could actually play characters. So it opens so many doors once the culture really took off. And I mean, you got people now. We mentioned Will Smith. That dude didn't have to look back or make another album for many years once he got that sitcom, and then
right.
he flew into the acting. So all of that, man, hip hop provided all of that to people.
Yeah, to your point, and I kind of want to talk about this as it relates to the Source magazine and what we mentioned earlier about rules. In a lot of ways, the Source magazine helped reinforce specific rules when it came to unfair or not, or fair or not, when it came to MCing, where people bought the magazine and they would go right to the hip hop quotable of the month, or go right to the album reviews to see how many mics an album got. Those mics, a lot of times, meant purchase or no purchase for certain hip hop fans. I know for me, from a discovery standpoint, um, a lot of times when I was, I knew there was music out, and I was unsure of what I wanted to get this time, I would read. It didn't matter if it was five mics. I would read about somebody else's
Mhm.
album that was reviewed to say, damn, well, does this sound good? Maybe I'll go check it out. Maybe I'll go buy it.
Right.
That was one of the things that made me buy it. I have the tape somewhere, but oh no, it's right here. The original tape that I bought on the Humble. Did not know anything about cocaine from the West
Wow.
Coast
Yeah.
back then. And I remember I read the article, and I forget who wrote it, but the description was so good that I felt like I had enough context to go and get it,
Get it.
and play
Yeah.
it, and listen to it. And obviously, as you can see, I have it to this day. Um, most people, and this is Ruthless Records, by the way,
Right.
and a lot of people, may know his later work, but don't know that album. And that album was really on some hip hop shit, like some real, almost like
Right.
some boom bap shit. Unlike his later albums that had way more West Coast flavor to it. But the Source magazine was a Bible for a lot of people,
Oh
and
yeah.
a entry point into new artists and up and coming artists. Like, imagine this for those who are younger and who are hip hop fans, and it sounds like we're spoiled, but in a lot of ways we were.
Yes, indeed, Law.
We knew who was hot, but we're seeing, like, in the demo section, Biggie Smalls, Eminem, Common, right? Not stars,
Right.
no albums out yet. Just this is who's up next. And when you think about things like that, as a hip hop fan, having a magazine that's somewhat of a source to hip hop and other magazines like it, like Murder Dog, um, we were starting to get the tools, right?
Mm.
To
Mhm.
kind of navigate, and everything wasn't just word of mouth or radio. Um, Really quick, one thing we'd be remiss if we don't mention, because this was a part of hip hop's popularity. In a lot of ways, some people may not like it, but it also created a debate within hip hop and challenged those rules. Me and Tone did an entire episode on them. We cannot forget MC Hammer.
Mm.
Can't do it.
Can't can't leave him out, no matter what. Whether it's about the debate of what he was to what he is, the popularity, but there's a lot that he also did, especially from a business standpoint.
Change the
Hip
game.
hop changed the game, because let's not forget, MC Hammer was selling his own music.
Right.
Record labels came to him,
Yep.
right? Soldier Boy did it later too,
Mm.
right? That's that's
Absolutely.
that's a part. Most MCs, and even to this day, right? They make their little demo and they looking to get put on. But you're talking about entrepreneurs who were able to negotiate their deals because they were already popular. They were already making money.
Mhm.
So MC Hammer was a big part of that. Um, Can't Touch This and that sample did a lot also for production and what can happen with the right sample and the right song and a catchy hook.
Look,
Um,
toys, cartoons, what everything.
Oh yeah.
Stereo, you name
Here,
it,
all that.
Taco Bell.
right? Everything. You know what I'm saying? And you just can't leave him out of the
Mm-mm.
conversation. And again, we did an entire episode on MC Hammer, breaking them down from very beginning, early beginnings until now. So salute to him and his contributions to the hip hop game.
Absolutely.
Now, fellas, another hot topic on Twitter that people love to talk about, and all they remember is the suit. It's the shiny suit era. It's Bad Boy. It's now there's party records from some of these guys who came out at a time where it was all about bars and keeping it real and rhyming. And now, in a lot of ways, it was back to what it used to be.
Mm.
Dancing, all in the video. Sorry, I couldn't help it. Dancing, come to death row. But you know what I mean? Like it was almost like the fun of hip hop was finding its way back. Tone, I'm coming to you, man. Did you look at the whole shiny suit era as diluting hip hop at that point in time, given all the lyricism and dopeness we got?
Listen, and I want people to hear this. If you didn't see episode 2 of the Dome podcast called The Disrespect of 1997 Hip Hop, I'll sum it up in 2 minutes real quick. This narrative, the shiny suit era, it's funny how that term just grew a life of its own, and you would think that this period lasted 5 years because Puff took a couple of 80s samples, made 2 or 3 records, and 2 or 3 videos with Mace, and yes, them joints played on the radio and played in the club a little bit, but you would think this all came out in 1997, when in reality, Biggie died in March, right, 1997, and then Life After Death dropped. A straight banging album, some of the best rapping you'll ever hear came out. Same time in this year, Wu-Tang Forever dropped, The Crew, Camp Low, all of these different Common. Look, this whole year has some amazing albums throughout the entire year. Cannabis started destroying the mixtapes. You know what I'm saying? Then next thing you know, in the spring of 1998, since we're saying the shiny suit era is really 1997, which is still overblown, a year after Biggie died, people forget, they think this is a long period of time here. A year after Biggie died, DMX dropped his Dark and Hell is Hot. All right? A superstar, Rough Riders took over hip hop damn near in spring of 98. Biggie died spring of 97. What shiny suit era? Era what, 7-8 months? Because folks been making on the radio. See, that narrative ran too long. When if you actually, anyone listening, Google put in 1997 hip hop and look at Capone, Noriega, and all them came out in 97.
Right.
Put in that and you'll see 30 hardcore albums that came out that year. You know what I'm saying? And people was playing. Everybody wasn't playing Puff Bass. Yeah, the radio and the clubs work, but if you was a hip hop purist, you might have been playing CNN or Camp Low or Wu-Tang Forever.
Right.
Wu-Tang was so large still in 1997. When we went to the midnight sale, the line was wrapped around the building to buy Forever. This is 1997, people. So what's the shiny suit era? It's overblown for me.
What do you say, man?
Radio. Okay.
No,
right.
I agree. I agree with that. I think there's too much emphasis put on that short amount of time that it just doesn't make sense. I mean, the man just broke it down easily. So anybody with a good sense will understand exactly what Tone just said, and it's true. It's true. Yeah, they was running the radio and they was running the club like that, but again, there was so much other music that dropped. How do people just want to focus primarily on that?
They stuck on No Way Out. Yes, they stuck on No Way Out. You know what I'm saying? But let me say something. Let me say this real quick. I have a list. Look at this. Wu-Tang Forever. One Day It'll All Make Sense by Common. O.C. Jewels. You know what I'm saying? The War Report. Super Duper Fly by Missy Elliott. When Disaster Strikes by Busta Rhymes. Okay, Harlem World was big, but so was Ghetto D by Master P. You know what I'm saying? You know, In My Lifetime Volume 1. The 18th Letter by Rakim. I Got Next by KRS-One. Back in Business by EPMD. The Crew Dirty 30. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are we Royal Flush, Ghetto Millionaire. So if you're a hip hop fan, you had a whole lot of stuff to pull for.
Well, you can't
bullshit.
You can't hear that. You can't hear none of that because all you hear is being around the world. I've been around the world. So there was not you just there's nothing else that you can hear because that's what.
Well, you know what? I think the thing, like, right when it comes to history, sometimes the story gets watered down and people only remember a thing, right?
Right.
It wasn't really shiny suits until Beanie said it in the battle. Right? Everybody and he said it in the 2000s.
Right.
at that, right? But I think it's a distraction only because rappers made money before, but now they were making a lot of money.
It were.
Gold used to be the thing to say, but now dudes were multi-platinum.
Because
Yep.
Mason sold 4 million with
Right.
Harlem World.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And Puff sold about 4 with No Way Out. So those were big sales. But at the same
Right.
time, the Wu-Tang Forever sold like 4 million. I think Ghetto D sold 3 or 4 million. So
Yep.
it's still that whole thing of there was still more battles than people believe. But if you was in the club a whole lot, yes, they played a lot of Bad Boy, but it wasn't just Puff and Mace. Life After Death dropped in 1997. So
Yep.
they was playing Hypnotized every other hour.
Right. And kicking the door. And I got a story. I remember being in the clubs, and a lot of that stuff off that album was getting played, and it wasn't all the dance shit either. But yeah, it's and again, for those watching, Tone brings up a great point. People love to say the shiny suit era, but it really didn't last that long. When you think about Bad Boy was doing their thing without the shiny suit before then.
Right.
Like Warning was Bad Boy. I don't know what y'all
Absolutely.
think, but Flavor in Your Ear remix was Bad Boy.
Those were singles.
Singles, right?
Huge too. Huge.
No shiny suits, right? No shiny suits. But it's definitely a great time in hip hop to point out, for what I said and for what Tone just brought up. There was a variety. The Mace thing, as far as the party songs and shit like that, was about the fun coming back into hip hop. But you still had Capone and Noriega.
Right.
You still had Common, and Common was ascending at that point with albums like this, right? You still had potency in lyrics. You still had the uniqueness of a Camp Low, right?
Yep.
And not
you know what, too vague?
Yeah.
It's funny because people shunning what Puff was doing in 97, but forget that hip hop started about the party. It started the block party. It started house parties like the movie House Party with Kid and Play. We had Kid and Play. We had Kwame. We had Heavy D. We had Special Ed. We had all these guys that was dope MCs, but dancing and stuff in the videos. Father MC. You know what I'm saying? All of this stuff. None of this was new in hip hop. Even in the midst of hardcore 90s hip hop, we was still rocking the Heavy D. I got nothing but love for you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So none of this was new.
Right. None of it was new. And again, for those that are paying attention, you hip hop fans, right? You're paying attention to this conversation. There's a reason why we started talking about what influenced us and what we were doing. And each one of us talked about us dancing, breaking, because it was a part of the culture. So the fact that it became a part of the culture in a much bigger way than it was, it still didn't drown out that music, because as much as I had No Way Out, I had Wu-Tang Forever.
Yeah.
I had The Carnival by Wyclef.
Right? Amazing album.
Amazing album. Right?
And you should be able to. There's no reason why you can't. There's no reason why you can't listen to both. And there's no reason why you should feel I guess people want you to feel ashamed. I don't know, but if you bring up that you listened and liked some of this music that we're talking about was being shitted on, there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Right.
Because there are joints that they made that a lot of people like. I'm one of the people that like a lot of the joints myself. Right. It's crazy. I don't know. I don't know if that's one. I guess that might be one of the rules we was talking about. Whatever this is, that you can only listen to hard leg music. If you're not listening to hard leg music, then you can't have no dance, and then you're a punk. I guess I don't know what it is.
Right.
You got to be in the club. You got to be in the club full of Timberlands and hoodies. And I guess you in the mosh pit of men. I don't know what that is. I don't want to be in that club.
But you know what? When the reality is, we used to go to the clubs in the 90s to find women.
Right. No doubt.
Because you know what? When LL dropped Doing It and all of this Hate Love and all this in 1995, The clubs was popping.
The clubs were popping, and like to both of these guys' points, when it came to the clubs, sure, there were records that were designed specifically for the clubs,
Absolutely.
radio, but again, you can go all the way back to what I said and what Tone kind of certified. That's why we liked Rappers Delight. When you don't have to do calculus to understand somebody's bars or science, right? You don't have
Climb the Great Pyramid.
right.
Right.
Hold up the sundial to the sun to the left to understand one motherfucking verse from this nigga.
Oh shit.
You know, it's that's not hip hop. All of it is hip hop.
Absolutely, no question.
Now, Tone, let me come to you about this. At this time, and you also mentioned it, and sorry to keep saying we did an episode on it as well. The South was around, but they were really around now because now you got Master P and No Limit, and the fact that the Bout It movie, like everybody now, like, oh, the hood movies and blah blah blah. Nah, man, Bout It. When I saw that, I was like, yo, what is this? Like, talk about the emergence of the South in a new way that to me extended it for even what it is now.
You know what? That there's a little like I don't know if it's a documentary or not, but it was about when Andre said the South got something to say at the source of wars because of course in the midst of the East Coast, West Coast, and all that, Outkast won best new group or whatever. So when when they called their names out, man, and they played this at the end of Equipment on Chunky Fire or whatever, like Drake came up. I mean, Big Boy was like, man, we in New York, man. What's going on, New York, and showing love, and people was kind of booing a little bit, and Andre was like, it's like this though. You know what I'm saying? He said, I'm tired of folks, closed-minded folks. And he was just talking about people don't want to hear the demo or whatever, but the South got something to say. That's all I got to say. And on that YouTube clip, it was an interview. They talked to T.I., like Luda and all these people, and they were like, look, a whole sense of pride happened when Andre said that. Because when Andre said that, he was dead serious. He wasn't joking. He walked off the stage. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't like some old, that was from the heart. And a lot of people down here was like, yeah, you know what? Now that I think about it, the Source magazine and some of the other magazines always played us a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like only lyrical niggas and stuff like that's from New York and shit like that. So, it was a lot of pride, man. And when Outkast dropped Southern Playalistic and showed us how Atlanta and how Georgia looked, and it was so vivid the same way Dre and them showed us how Compton looked. You know what I'm saying? So after that happened, man, of course, again, you still had UGK and 8Ball. Everyone started popping, but Outkast took the lead. You know what I'm saying? Going into ATL is at the Southern Playalistic and all that. Good Amount blew up. And then at the same time, Master P at some point, Bout It was out for a long time. It was underground. You know what I'm saying? But when he popped, and then when he dropped like Ghetto D and several other albums, they just exploded. And then at some point, No Limit was dropping an album like every 2 weeks, like literally.
Yeah.
Kane, Abel, damn Milk, whoever. You know what I'm saying? And then that led into the Hot Boys. And we know the trio of the Hot Boys to Cash Money to Young Money gives you Baby, Juvenile, all of these guys, Lil Wayne, and they're all the way down to Nicki and Drake and everyone, and they still destroying and controlling hip hop. Not destroying in a bad way, but destroying the charts. You know what I'm saying? So that Guerrilla Warfare would have dropped it like 98, 99. Because the Cash Money and Rough Riders had a tour. Next thing you know, it's 2023. Drake's still the biggest rapper in the world.
Right.
And Nicki, the biggest female rapper in the world still. She dropped something. She's the largest.
Right.
So the South exploded and never looked back after 94.
Yentz, you from them parts, man. You seeing the No Limit Soldiers. You seeing Cash Money, Click Crew, whatever. You just seeing your town come up and be popular. And not just popular where you are, right? Because you're seeing Jay-Z hop on the High remix with Juvenile. What was your thoughts seeing New Orleans come up in a big way?
Man, it was crazy. Like when you see stuff like that, like kind of like when when a city wins a Super Bowl, you know, everybody in the city's feeling that energy and everything like that. That's kind of how it was, you know. People was, I mean, really supported No Limit and Cash Money. I mean, you know, the whole way through. So, you know, to see that, I mean, like No Limit, that was crazy. Just like Tone was saying, like the amount of music that started getting released, you know, I mean, it was like they just had like, you ever see there's a like a little highlight of a I Love Lucy where they trying to do cupcakes and the shit's sending so many cupcakes they can't fucking keep up. Well, that's what it was like with the No Limit fucking album turnouts. Like you didn't even know some of them people was on No Limit until you saw an album. Like, damn, who is this? You know, because you only knew a couple of core members and everything like that. And yeah, I mean, Cash Money, I mean, they took over big time, man. They you know, like Tone said too, brought you Drake, brought you Nicki Minaj. You know, all of that's directly from No Limit and Cash Money, is no question. And like, you know, the thing with Outkast too, I think when we start talking about how Andre felt and how a lot of people felt, I don't think that's that feeling. I think a lot of people got that feeling mixed up where they were talking about people on the ground, regular people. They weren't talking about regular people.
No,
they were talking about, you know, radio, the media. That's what they were talking about. That's where all of that so-called bias and everything, that's where that comes from. That's what all these cats had been frustrated with for a long time. And, you know, it kind of bubbled on at that award show. But, you know, it's not against the people on the ground. And you know how I know that? Because I always speak with Vegas. Vegas said, man, I was on it. I was listening to that. It's not the people on the ground. It's the media that, you know, if they choose who they write about, they choose how they write about what they write.
Right.
So, of course, you know, it's gonna rub the artist the wrong way because they feeling they're not getting a fair shake. But like, I'm sure Andre and Big Boy, they ever in New York, people are fucking running up to them. They love the music. You know, they big up both of them constantly all through the whole run. It's just, you know, the magazines and everything, it came to a head.
Yeah.
When you think about it, hip hop was young, right?
Absolutely.
And when you're not mature, right, you do those things. And I think with the New York media and publications, that was a true sign of that, of it exploding locally so much that you hadn't experienced anything outside of it to even understand what's dope about it. And I think the Dungeon family did an excellent job of saying, well, let us introduce you to what we are and who we are. Because I'll never forget, right? I love joints like Cell Therapy. Just the minute you heard the beat, you like, hey, what is this? As soon as you heard the beat. But a record like What You Really Know About the Dirty South, to me, that's like education. And be like, oh shit, yeah, they like us. You know, they like the West Coast. They like this and that.
Right.
And that's what was needed, right? And it was the job of those who were the writers and the curators of the culture to do that research and then introduce them to those of us that don't know, right? And a lot of it was just so crazy. But to really speak on real quick the whole No Limit thing and Cash Money, I know for me, you know, I was at Morgan State in Baltimore, you know, with my friends, and I remember we got the Bout It tape, like one tape, VCR, y'all, no DVD, it wasn't out yet. VCR, one tape, you know, that one dude who got it, he's like, yo, put that shit in. And we watching that shit, we like, damn, this dude a rapper. And the shit was like everything, right? Like movie, part, concert. It was like some Dolomite shit almost. You don't understand, like, is this a concert or a movie? Like, but it was the hood movie, right? That we all know now that has bigger budgets. But the fact that we all knew at the time, nah, he financed this. Right. He's a rapper. He selling his own music like Hammer.
Right.
And all of that. And to see that explode into something big, and like you said, they started releasing so many artists that we didn't even know was on the labels. Some of the motherfuckers, I think they just worked in the building and they got an album. Shout out to Mercedes, because we all looked at the album cover like, I haven't heard one lyric, but goddamn, who's that? You know what I'm saying? Like, who is that? Like, you know what I'm saying? But the same thing with No Limit. And what I liked about not No Limit, with Cash Money. And what I liked about that is the first time I heard Bling Bling, I was like, yo, these cats could rap. Like, when I heard Turk, a little nigga 17, yo, when I heard him, got so much ice you could skate on it, nigga, I was like, okay, those are bars. Like, you know what I'm saying? I was like, yo, this shit is hot. And don't let anyone tell you any differently. Right? I'm not an anomaly. I know some people know one nigga from New York, and now they know New York, right? Or they took one trip, and now they know. But there were I knew people who like that shit more than they like the local shit, and they were from Brooklyn,
right,
or whatever, because it was about the music. And for those watching, none of these debates are new, right?
Right.
Like, we talk about it all the time. None of this stuff is new. But as hip hop heads, we all shared, especially if you had the opportunity to go to higher education and you meet people from other places and you kind of exchange, culture. Now with the internet, you can do that every day.
Yep.
So we'd be remiss during that shiny suit era, not to mention what else was happening with the South that we would see, including within New York rappers' slang. And that takes us to end of the 90s into the early 2000s, Rockefeller, Rough Riders, 50 Cent, Eminem. Tone, Biggie and Pac are gone. That era, East Coast, West Coast, is gone. DMX then came out. Hardcore hip hop is kind of back. Jay-Z's like the king, basically. He can't miss with the hits as far as New York City goes. And then you have all these other people coming into play, right? Eminem, like, the first time you heard Eminem or 50 Cent or just experienced Rough Riders as a crew, and everything else that came around that time in hip hop, what did you think at this point in your life when you're seeing hip hop go to this next phase that almost feels like uncharted territory for us?
I mean, again, hip hop has had several explosions. You know what I'm saying? And this is just another explosion. Jay-Z, DMX dropping 2 platinum albums in the same year in '98. Nas actually dropped 2 platinum albums in '99, even though even though Nostradamus don't get the same kind of love, of course, he dropped 2 platinum albums in the same year. Jay-Z drops 5 million. Then, Eminem totally changed the game because nobody expects that. I mean, on the underground circuit, he's battling people and stuff like that. Like, yeah, the white boy is good, he can rap. But when because he had a Slim Shady EP first, you know what I'm saying? Once Drake got a hold of him, like fully got a hold, it was over. I mean, because at the end of the day, Eminem was selling 1 million records in 1 week, opening week and stuff like that. And he changed the game. And from that perspective, his shock value was something crazy. But lyrically and skill wise, all the legends give him props. I talked about that the other day on Twitter. And so Eminem changed the game in the same way, it was kind of flukish how Drake kind of started working with him. He's listening to a mixtape on a flight back from somewhere, and that mixtape was this dude named 50 Cent from fucking New York. You know what I'm saying? And he's like, yo, we got to get this dude out here to rhyme with us. And next thing you know, a year and a half, 2 years after that, 50 does something hip hop that hasn't happened for 10 years, and that was with Snoop Dogg Doggy Style. Most anticipated album. Dre does In the Club. 50 goes through the roof. You know what I'm saying? The whole G Unit, the shoes, the movies, the whole legacy of 50 Cent starts right there, man. And right now he's a media mogul. You know what I'm saying? During this same era, Kanye West leaves Chicago for underground producer and produces on the Blueprint and all this stuff, and then he turns out to be at one point the biggest celebrity in the world potentially. You know what I'm saying? So this is from the same 2004, 2005 era. You know what I'm saying? For us down here in North Carolina, we was very excited because we had a group down here called Little Brother, you know what I'm saying, who started getting a lot of run down here and started getting national, whatever, because Pete Rock and Primo, everybody liked them, and Ninth Wonder produces on the Black Album, and he makes Fruity Loops popular. A lot of people don't know that. Ninth Wonder is the one that made Fruity Loops popular around the world, basically. Cats wasn't talking about Fruity Loops like that. You know what I'm saying? And he did that. And then he ends up producing for Mary J and Destiny Child and all these people using his machine and that program. You know what I'm saying? So for us, that whole era, man, like it just exploded, man. Jay Dilla exploded all over again from being the underground dude with producing with Slum Village and the Far Side and all this shit to Donuts, you know what I'm saying, to people fighting his style, and then him passing away and leaving this legacy, man, of production. And man, that was a great moment, man. Early 2000s, man, the Nas and Jay-Z battle of 2001 took us all the way back, potentially the biggest battle in hip-hop history. So that 2000, man, to like 2005 or 6, man, it was incredible, man. And again, Lil Wayne was going to eventually merge. Kanye became a global star. Man, what can I say? It's crazy.
Yeah, when you think about like everything you just said right there about that point in time, it's almost like a rebirth in some ways, right? Because that whole Biggie Tupac death thing kind of paused the momentum a little bit, even though cats were still releasing heat and we were still absorbing it. We were still feeling the effects of what had happened.
Yeah.
But I think definitely by the time we hit 2000 and on, right, Supreme Clientele was out. We felt like we were on the other side of that moment in hip hop. We was further enough away to feel like, well, this is what's next. This is what's happening next. From, like you said, from the G Unit stuff to the Eminem and Aftermath and
State
Crime
Property, Rockefeller.
Right, Rockefeller, State Property, Dipset,
Dipset,
all of that. Even the ringtone era, which to Tone's point, also did not last very long. It was a part of it was literally connected to catchy hooks, catchy beats, and the emergence of technology. The emergence of Napster and iTunes and smartphones, right? Most people had, well, not most people, but a lot of people had them. So it's just when you look at that time, it's kind of like the time that birthed where we are now with the internet, because I think that played a big role in it as well. From shout out to Boxton.com. Yeah, I know those who know Boxton.com, all them sites where albums were getting bootlegged, albums were being shared, music was being shared. Sometimes you discovered things or found a record that you had on a mixtape way back in the days. And in a lot of ways, during this time, the mixtape game changed. We mentioned earlier the Ron G's and the Kid Capri's, where it was more about mixing the music you like. Then it got into a point with the Clues and everyone else, and even DJ Envy and DJs like that, where it was about finding exclusives to share on the mixtapes. Then it got to this point with the Lil Waynes and the G Units and the Dipsets, where it was about rhyming over other beats, even in most cases making songs out of these mixtapes. Tone, when you look at, like, for example, I remember I was on around this time is when I was doing radio in college, and I was about to graduate. Well, in '99, I was still in school when I did the show, but I had the FM show while I was in school and then graduated. And I know for a fact that there were just things from the battle with Jay-Z and Nas to Supreme Clientele, stuff that happened, but I'll never forget when it came to 50 Cent and G Unit and the anticipation for Get Rich or Die Trying was so crazy that we were taking bets. We were like, I don't know if someone can live up to this amount of hype. It was so crazy because all the songs were hitting. He was new, and to have him release that album with a DVD that had all the videos on it and kind of meet the demand, it was just too difficult for him to duplicate that at any point in his career because it was lightning in a bottle.
It was.
You know, when you look at, and like you said, when you look at today, you look at him and Eminem and that era of Aftermath, it just got crazy. Now, for you, the ringtone era, a lot of times, is synonymous again with the South because that's where a lot of the hits were coming from, right? Ying Yang Twins, Lil Jon,
Throw
even
some
some of
D's and all
the
that.
right, or even some of, and don't get it twisted, y'all. Like that white tee shit, that was my shit. I'm please.
Yeah.
But all of that, you know, again, it's party records, it's catchy. Did you feel at one point when that became so popular but became so synonymous with the South, did you feel like in some ways it could possibly dilute what Outkast and others had built up as far as what Southern hip hop sounds like?
No, I really didn't, man. The reason why was because again, there's room at the party for more than one sound, man. You know, and those were big hits in terms of like the party and the radio and stuff like that. But for any real hip hop head, now, well, casual might feel different, but for any real hip hop head, during the same time the ringtone stuff was doing this thing, you still had the trap. You know, you still
Mhm.
had Ti, you still had Jeezy, you still had all these dudes, you know, down here really spitting. Ludacris was still killing it. You know what I'm saying? So you still have all of these guys, you know, and Vince Gucci and all them doing their thing. You know what I'm saying? So the streets was still getting that trap. You know what I'm saying? And the
Mhm.
clubs was getting the ringtone or the party joints, whatever you want to call them. So it was room for both.
Right. And it was a new generation in a lot of
New,
ways.
the
And
young
I
generation.
think that's what a lot of people, as we go through these different eras, forget that we talked about when we were very young and what was popping for us and when we were in college and when we were in high school and what was happening. But now we're kind of becoming the OGs in this hip hop game.
Hey,
And some of the things that are happening are for a newer generation.
thank you for saying that because I tried to explain that to some people before that when I say our time is up, I don't mean like, oh, we can't love hip hop no more. But hip hop is a young man's sport to a degree. So
Right.
yeah, we respect the legends and all that because now we're older. You know what I'm saying? But so if I meet an 18-year-old kid, if the 18-year-old kid know about most different Tyler Quality, then great. That's cute. They know about Rakim, great, man. You heard Pay the Fool, that's great. But if they say, you know what, I heard all that, I respect it, but man, I like this young jock or whoever. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like I love this
Right. Right.
this joint in the club right here. How am I gonna get mad when I used to like Kwame? You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like they trying to dance and have a good time, drink and party. They don't want to hear no damn cannabis and Pharoah Monch. There nothing wrong with that. You know what I'm saying? You got an
Right.
ATO high school if they can know who these people are and respect the culture and still not want to listen to it. This they era
Mhm.
now, not my era.
Right. Yeah. And
My era.
one other thing before we kind of move into the final phase of this is to mention like hip hop is growing even far beyond where it was. Cats are again not only going multi-platinum and making more money than they ever did, especially compared to their counterparts from the early 80s, early 70s, or whatever. But not only do we have the continuation of the movies, but we have hip hop artists who appear in television programs beyond Fresh Prince of Bel Air, right? We have LL Cool J's and the Commons, you know, and other hip hop artists like
Ice
Biggie,
T been on like SUV whatever for
right?
20 years
For 20 years, right?
on
Fredro
Law and
on
Order.
Moesha, right? Uh, Tupac appearing on A Different World and things like that. And Also, video games. We had video games that like Def Jam Fight for New York
Yeah.
featured a number of rappers, right? 50 Cent has his own video games. He has two video games. One which is really like when it dropped in the video game world, it didn't receive a lot of high scores, but now when you watch YouTube, pretty critically acclaimed because for just being fun. But this is 50 Cent and G Unit
Yeah.
in a video game. The Wu-Tang had their own video game during the PlayStation era. So hip hop is becoming like not it was already global, but now it's becoming pop culture itself.
It's the biggest culture in the world
Right,
in
right.
terms of music and style. You know what I'm saying? The
Mhm.
big corporation, Fortune 500 companies use hip hop songs in their commercials and use certain artists to market their product. You know, you
Right.
got in Europe, hip hop has been huge in Europe for the last 40 years, you know what I'm saying, or 35 years. You know, Asians love hip hop in terms of the whole culture. You know what I'm saying? Well, the Wu-Tang, Wu-Tang had a lot of influence on that, but at the same time, you can go on there and see a lot of kids from in Asia breakdancing, the style of dress, the rapping. You know, it's just the
Mhm.
biggest music culture and culture in general globally now. It's not even close.
Right. Exactly. So the last part of this is obviously 2010s until now. And when we look at hip hop now, there's a lot of elements of the game that still exist in ways that at some point some people think would never still exist, from the lyricism, from battles, right? Certain people who like a for example, someone like a Drake who's never really released a complete hip hop album, yet and still he takes on hip hop battles
He
with some
does.
spitters, right? We're not talking about other people who can't really rap. We're talking about people who could rap, and having that coexist, and then having people like or artists like Kendrick, right?
Oh my
Contain
God.
so many elements of the
Special.
past and
Special.
current, right? Um, and like we mentioned recently, we have something that was happening with one particular artist being LL Cool J being really like the only one to show any real longevity as far as commercial success goes. But now we have Nas still, having younger and older people clamor
Yep.
for a new album. Same thing with Jay-Z. Tone, when you look at from the 2010s to now, and all these different parts of hip hop still being pretty relevant, right? Boom bap is still relevant, thanks
Yeah.
to Griselda and
Yeah.
Rock Marciano. When
Yep.
you look at hip hop today, given everything we already discussed, do you think it's a bright future for the game, or do you think at some point, like jazz, like the blues, it will begin to fall into the background?
Well, that's a good question. I think right now hip hop's still in a strong place because the culture is so strong and so influential on the youth. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think it's gonna fade to black in no time soon, like jazz did, or even some other forms of music that went kind of underground. But I do feel like we're in an interesting time as well because you have a segment of hip hop like drill music. You know what I'm saying? That's very aggressive, and it's a whole different level of gangster rap. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause you
Right.
got some of these guys in drill music in Florida and Chicago and other places where they are literally naming people that got murdered in their hood. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Some of these guys were actually involved in some of these murders and stuff like that. And, rumors like, God bless the dead King Von, but there's a lot of rumors that people like him was a part of murders. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
a lot of this stuff now is very aggressive, and I would say this: hip hop will be fine as long as drill music doesn't get more popular than it is, man. You know what I'm saying? We need that portion of it to go back to the underground, to the hoods. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? But as long as you have someone like a Kendrick Lamar in this position, man, where his creativity helps to push the culture, you still have Drake, love him or hate him. He has the look, the style. He's not threatening. He can make any kind of song and stay on the radio in the club. You know what I'm saying? Drake actually has been on the billboards for the last decade. People sleeping on that, but Drake been on the billboards for the last decade. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? So is Kendrick Lamar. J. Cole is a huge star. You know what I'm saying? You even have someone, we didn't talk about, Latifah and Salt and Pepper and MC Lyte and all of them and Lauryn Hill enough, but the women have always been important to the culture. And even right now, we got somebody like Rhapsody making good
Right.
music. You know what I'm saying? So I think the culture is fine, but there are segments of it, like the drill music, that it can taint it a little bit. But same way with gangster rap, it'll fade at some point, and the creativity of people like Kendrick are still, those guys are still the faces of the era. You know what I'm saying? Not the drill guys
Yeah.
per se, even though Future is large and stuff like that. But overall, Kendrick, Drake, and J. Cole are the largest rappers
Right.
for the most part, and I don't think their images are bad at all. I think they do a good representation. I think Kendrick has a chance. I think people will look back at someone like him. He could potentially tap into that top 10 greatest MCs of all time, in my opinion, because
Mm.
obviously the same people can't stay there forever. That's not realistic. At some point, Jordan moved Dr. J out the top 10, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It happens. You know what I'm saying? So I think there's some special guys here. And then, like you said, you have the Rock Marciano, you have the Griselda, and you even have the Lock still making good music this late. I mean, so I think everyone is satisfied in terms of, there's music for every type of demographic within hip hop. Even for our age, we still got, like you said, Nas still dropped four projects in the last 2 or 3 years.
Hmm.
So we're still getting our music, and the clubs are still getting Drake, and the eclectic people still getting Kendrick, and some of the backpackers are getting J. Cole, and the underground hardcore cats are getting the whole Griselda movement and stuff like that. So
Right.
I think all bases are covered. The hood is still getting the drill music.
Right. Right. And you know what? Just to bring it full circle on another aspect from the fandom side of things, the way we consume the music, the way we find the music or discover the music
It's
is
easier than ever.
also changed. Right, right. It's at one point we put a lot of emphasis on magazines, which is not the way nowadays. If you are lucky if you can still publish a magazine. Most of what we read or find are on the internet, and now it's not necessarily coming from journalists. It's coming from fans in some regards, like
Yeah,
you and me providing content. Also, streaming services,
yeah,
even though not very good for the pockets of the artists. But again, it does a lot to expose others to music that once they would had to have purchased, right?
yeah,
You would have had enough money to hear Ti's whole catalog, right?
yeah,
If you wasn't up on them from the beginning, you had to choose an album or two once upon a time. So in a lot of ways, the internet and the way we communicate and share music and kind of share the culture with each other across the world has changed in a big way. And some of those older ways of doing things still exist. Because I know for me, just to give people context of me at one point when it was the record store, like the fellas mentioned, versus now. Before, I would just walk into that record store and just be there, just reading and looking at everything,
yeah,
and then picking something I want to spend my money on. It's the same thing I do on the internet, right? I'm reading, I'm finding out what people are saying about it, whether it's on social media or someone reviewed the album or whatever. And it's the same discovery, but it's just more of it. It's just a bigger record store in a lot of ways. And I think as far as hip hop goes, before we kind of close the cap on this, as far as hip hop goes for the future, Tone, like you said, man, when we can recognize that there's some things about it that we don't like, that we wish would stop, that we feel will stop, like as a phase, a bad phase. And I could see hip hop again just being a part of normal life the way it was for us in our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And I think it is in a lot of ways with the way it's penetrated popular culture from film to, I guess, a prime example, Tone, and we see it all the time, is watching a news anchor or someone else from somewhere in the country putting lyrics from a hip hop artist in their speech,
Yeah.
in the weather. You know what I'm saying? Paying homage to Fife Dog in your news report, right?
Right.
You know, just things like that that tell me these are the people who grew up on hip hop and now they're your politicians and your
Yeah.
weatherman and and filmmakers. Uh
Jay-Z got the Barack on the text, like he said back when Barack was the president.
right. right.
Think
Right.
about that. From a culture that started from black kids, Latino kids, and Caribbean kids in the early 1970s to them saying, "Oh, these just kids playing around with music in the park or whatever. This is a phase. That shit gonna go away." To Easy E being in the White House, to to Jay Z and a group of other MCs in the White House having, talking and meeting with Obama, you know what I'm saying, and stuff like that, man. I mean, it's really incredible when you think about it. You know what I'm saying? To a lot of different MCs over the years being in politics in terms of going around and promoting their politician and helping them with the campaign and stuff like that. Who would have thought we would have made it this far? It's incredible, man. And as far as a 50-year-old young culture,
Right. Right. 50 years of hip hop, man, and it's still young, but it's a milestone for the game. It's a milestone for all of those who have contributed to the game. Obviously, this is a longer episode than usual. We can't fit everything in there. We can't touch upon every person and every era or moment in hip hop, but in a lot of ways we have already, right? If you want to know about the ladies and how they contributed to hip hop, me and Tone did an entire episode that talks about all the contributions the women had in hip hop. And believe me, they're plentiful and they last throughout every era of every decade of
absolutely.
every record label or whatever we've mentioned. There have been ladies right there uh, pushing the culture forward in a lot of
Absolutely.
ways. Um, Also, so let's do the fun thing and shout out to Yentz, whose internet went out. So he may or may not rejoin us, but he did contribute to the conversation, and you
Absolutely.
can check him out on Hip Hop Twitter, available everywhere you get your podcast. Um, but Tone, man, since we talking 50 years of hip hop, we big hip hop fans and heads, and we talk about it all the time, man. Give me your favorite album of all time, your favorite and your favorite MC, and what era of hip hop was your favorite time in hip hop?
All right, man. So for people that know me, they've seen me type this before. My favorite album in hip hop history is A Tribe Called Quest, Midnight Marauders.
Mm,
It's my favorite album. I probably know every word to the album. And just since I'm saying favorite, my favorite album is that. My favorite hip hop song is Lyrics to Go by A Tribe Called Quest.
mm,
Um, so obviously, I'm a native tongue fanatic over here. My favorite MC is Nas. People that know me know that he's been my favorite MC since Illmatic for the most part, and that never changed.
mm,
Favorite era might be 87 to 96. That time period there, because I got a chance to fall in love with the music on a different level. I was older, I understood it. I had KRS-One, Rakim, Kane, Slick Rick, all of these guys, Public Enemy, Tribe, like I said, Daylight, the West Coast banging with NWA, Ice Cube, all of these guys, Souls of Mischief, The Far Side, Pac, Big, Jay-Z, all these up to 1996. You know what I'm saying? So that would be my time period right there, man. 87, the Rakim, KRS-One era, leading up to 1996, which I
mm,
said earlier when your computer went down, I believe. In 1996 is the second greatest hip hop year ever to me, behind 1988. right before 87 and 98. So 87 and 96, man, was pretty much flawless to me. Though I do like a lot of years after that, just as much. But if I had to pick something, that's the era. What about you?
Yeah, for me, similar to Tone, man, we say these things all the time, but my favorite hip hop album of all time is hands down Ice Cube's Death Certificate. I think it's, even though these types of albums, as far as the themes and feeling like a journey from first song or intro to outro, um, Death Certificate touched upon so much, socially, from a hip hop standpoint, production, East, West. It just had so many things. And at that point in time in my life, what being a younger dude, um, it Ice Cube put me on to a lot that I didn't know, or at least details or things I you know, had assumptions about at one point in time. And in a lot of ways, Yentz is back in full effect. Uh, you might want to work on your mic though. We can't hear anything.
You don't hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now. Okay.
Okay.
But yeah, man, Death Certificate from beginning to end, man, from that intro all the way to hearing No Vaseline come on at the end. It, in a lot of ways, it really set the tone for me as a young man coming up in the game and reading the autobiography of Malcolm X
Yeah,
around the same time, and it influenced a lot of what I did, along with the time, to who I am now. Right, it's a blueprint. My favorite MC of all time is Biggie Smalls,
yeah.
and that wasn't the case at one point. I went through a couple of phases of having my favorites, right, from Slick Rick to Ice Cube to Redman, but with Biggie being my favorite MC, given those MCs who were my favorite at one point, I think he embodied a lot of elements of them, right? From the storytelling to
Absolutely.
being able to, have party records that contain bars, and never really compromising his lyrical techniques or his integrity as an MC, because he was on a 80s sample, right?
Yeah.
He always kept that in mind, and he talked about hip hop like a fan. When you listen to Juicy, he's
Juicy is a
talking about
perfect hip hop song.
right. He's talking about hip hop like a fan, and I related to everything he said. And the Brooklyn part was just a cherry on top, because if there's one thing about Jay-Z versus Biggie when it comes to who's more Brooklyn, Brooklyn heads know it is Biggie,
Yeah, he's
right?
more Brooklyn.
It's just Biggie and everything he does. And Jay-Z sometimes, at least back then, came across more like a Harlem cat. But he's still Brooklyn, he's still Marcy, don't get it twisted. So Notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls is my favorite MC of all time. My favorite era is probably the early to mid 90s, because for me, again, being a tween into a teen into going to college, and around maybe 94 is when I started rhyming. So now I'm paying attention to lyricism in
Yeah.
a different way, and it's influencing how I write. And I just looked at the skill level, just that bar just constantly would rise between the Wu and Nas and Prodigy and Biggie and
Yeah.
Jay-Z and everybody that came along, Pac, right? All these people that came along that was raising the bar with the music, and it was extremely competitive. And I think I liked that part of it a lot. So again, Death Certificate is my favorite album of all time. Biggie's my favorite MC. And early to mid 90s is probably my favorite time in hip hop. Yentz, for you, what is your favorite hip hop album, hands down, all time? Your favorite MC of all time, and what for you was the best era? Your best era of hip hop.
Hmm. Best era would be probably 87 to, I don't know, 94 maybe.
Mm.
uh Favorite album. Wow, man, that's Follow the Leader, Eric B. and Rakim. I'll go
Mm.
with that. Now MC. Wow. I'm gonna go KRS One.
Mm.
I'll go KRS One. You know, I mean, y'all probably already said it, but I mean, dude, from '87 till now, he's still active,
Mm.
still, putting out quality. His pen never stopped. You
Yeah.
Right.
can debate on the music, you know what I mean, because it'll never be what it was in '87. But he's this dude. He said he'd be rhyming until he's 60. So
Yeah.
Mm.
he definitely gave that promise, and then he was succeeded. So yeah, KRS One, favorite MC. Follow Leader, Eric B. and Rakim would be my album, and I'd say 87 and 94, if that makes sense. Works for me.
And what makes Follow the Leader your favorite album, as opposed to what people would think
Mhm.
Paid in Full?
I love Paid in Full, but I think Follow the Leader up the ante.
Mm.
Yep.
Rakim lyrically took it to a whole nother level. You already thought with Paid in Full and everything that he, you know, changed MCing forever.
Mm.
But I think that next album, he even did more on that next album. It's kind of hard to explain. I mean, you often told me about the book that I'm still planning on getting, but
Right.
everything that you told me about his process in that book, I mean, Follow a Leader, that's the book. That's what he described to me.
Mm.
And you telling me that's what he described is how he went into making Follow the Leader. So, you know, that's about all I can say about that.
That's dope, man. For those watching, what do you think about 50 years of hip hop? Where did it begin for you? Where did your love for the hip hop game begin? Doesn't matter if it was right now or a couple of years ago, or the 90s or the early 2000s. What's your favorite album of all time? Who's your favorite MC? Leave your comments in the comment section below, or you can hit us up on Twitter. I like to thank uh, Tony from IntoTheDome.com and Into the Dome podcast, Yinch from Hip Hop Twitter. I think this was a very dope show. I think we covered the essence of what hip hop is on its 50th year and beyond. And really quick, so we can get it in there, Yinch, what do you think for one, do you like where hip hop is today? And where do you think it's going next?
Wow, those are those are good questions. I I still love hip hop like I loved it in the beginning. It hadn't changed for me. Of course, I don't necessarily like uh the the oversaturation, I guess would be the best way to
Mm.
put it. Like there's too many albums by the same artist, you know, sometimes weeks apart.
Mm.
And I think cats need to slow down releasing that much material and not allowing their audience to really, absorb what they putting out. I think that would be one thing I would like to change uh, as far as how we consume it. Um, the future, I mean, I think it's still gonna be good. I mean, I look at people like Sky Zoo, uh,
Mm.
people like there's a cat that I really enjoy called Marlon Craft. Him.
Mm.
There's a young guy out of California. LaRussell.
Hmm.
All these cats, in my opinion, are who are gonna bring the future about, and it's still gonna be good as far as I'm concerned. You know, because I don't really focus on too much of what I don't like, so you won't hear me maybe saying nothing about that. But I will tell you what I do like, and from what I like, I see the future as being good. I think it's going to be in good hands, you know, for years to come, hopefully. And you know, those cats that I mentioned, you know, they'll be having albums. I think Skyzoo got something that he may have just recently dropped, that I'm looking forward to listening to. So, you know, yeah, I think with those cats that I mentioned, and you know, whatever else comes, I'm just happy to hear it. I don't want the oversaturation. Please don't drop an album today and then next week drop another album. Or this is a thing that I don't like too. Drop the album this week and then next week release the album calling it a deluxe edition, and it's got 2 extra joints. Come on, man. No. We don't need that.
Right.
Don't need that.
All right. Well, again, salute to you brothers for coming through for this show. I think it was a
Absolutely.
dope show. I think for those who learned something, go share this podcast, share your thoughts, share what you learned with others you know would enjoy this kind of content. But most importantly, man, keep listening to hip hop, keep doing the knowledge on the music, the artists. Give the flowers to the pioneers who are still here, who are tangible through social media and other channels. Shout out to them for not falling off the face of the planet in a lot of ways. Shout out to all the organizations trying to commemorate hip hop because it's important. And we look forward to what the future holds for the hip hop game, man. So till next time, y'all, go out, support real hip hop. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.